Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the special meeting of the Executive Committee of the Board of Regents for Higher Education for this date, Wednesday, October 7th. For those with us now, welcome, and those joining, once you cross the technical hurdles to get here, we look forward to having them as well. So I'm calling the meeting to order, and I'd like to ask the secretary to call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Fleury. With your permission, I'll call the roll. Regent Balducci. Regent Balducci?
Yes, here.
Thank you. Regent Cohen?
Here.
Regent Harris? Not yet. Regent Jimenez? Not yet. Regent Wright?
Here.
Thank you. And Regent Gray Kemp? Not yet. And Chair Fleury, you have a quorum.
Thank you. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda and a second?
So moved. Second.
Thank you, Elise and Naomi. It's moved and seconded. Any comments, additions, whatever? All right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Everybody said aye. Yep. Thank you. Okay. The agenda is adopted. So for my remarks, I'll be very, very brief. Just to say, I, with a couple of you, sat through most of the recent discussion just in the past hour and a half on the Finance Committee. Thank you to our Finance Chairman for leading that and bringing all the appropriate focus to that challenging issue. One of the things, and certainly the board is going to have to continue to deal with this under the circumstances, and the management team is already working on it. Mark will report on that in just a bit. One of the major points of discussion had to do with personnel, which, as everybody knows, is substantially contract driven in our system. And as such, we're going to have a small committee of the board to be the probably frequent touch point for the management team throughout the course of any forthcoming negotiations, either in the near term, if we're able to achieve that, or in the somewhat longer term on the cycle of the routine contract renewals. And I'm really grateful to Regents Jimenez and Felice Gray Kemp for serving on that committee. And as such, I've also asked Felice to join the executive committee. So she, I know, was invited to these meetings starting today and may or may not be able to join us with this one. But that's why you will see her, hear her as part of the executive committee conversations going forward. With that, may I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. So moved. Second.
Thanks. Any amendments or revisions to the minutes? Hearing none. All in favor on the minutes? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right, the minutes are approved. So President Ojakian, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few quick updates. I'll be giving a much more comprehensive report to the full board next week as part of my report, but just sort of to piggyback on where you left off, which was on the budget. We had a very robust meeting this morning, and special thanks to Ben and his team and all the finance folks at the institutions for putting together a very, I think, realistic budget revision, which shows that our deficit now is down from $90 million to about $69 million. So we still have a ways to go, but we've made some progress in addressing some of the deficit. As you indicated, we still have a ways to go, and a lot of it's going to be driven by personnel costs, and whether those conversations happen within the structure of the current collective bargaining agreements, or whether they're part of the negotiation process for future or successor collective bargaining agreements. It's going to be important for David and Felice to work with our team to move any sort of proposals forward, and then to brief the executive committee and the board. The direction from the finance committee was pretty clear this morning, and that was we need to continue to analyze staffing patterns for the short term and also into the future. We need to look at workforce reductions as they need to take place either now and in the future. And we need to continue to press our collective bargaining union leaders to come to the table and have some meaningful conversations about concessions. You may know, and I think it was included in the finance material packet, we did send communication to union leaders asking them within the confines of their collective bargaining agreements if they would come to the table and talk about concessions. We've received no response from union leaders except for one, which was the AUP, which I don't believe was reasonable in terms of what the ask was. You have their response, so I'm not going to dwell on sort of what they said. But clearly, what the finance committee heard this morning, for example, is that the salary increase that became effective July 1st cost $20 million this fiscal year. If you look at the value system-wide, including Management Confidential and the system office, the value of one furlough day in our system is $1.7 million. So that's a conversation that I know a couple of board members, and especially David, was very interested in having us continue. He pointed out, if he was here, I'd let him speak for himself, but he basically pointed out that these kinds of conversations and concessions are commonplace now in private and public sectors of employment. And so we should continue to have those conversations. We also did ask, as you know, for the governor and the legislature to be helpful to us. I sent a letter Monday to the governor and to legislative leaders detailing our financial situation and asking them to be a part of the solution. But we're not going to get $69 million from the state of Connecticut to sort of bridge the gap. I don't have a crystal ball, but I've been around a long time. I know that that's probably not likely. So we're going to have to continue to focus on where our budget contains the most exposure, and that is in the personnel costs. So I'll have more to report at the full board meeting, but just as an overall process today, it was a very robust conversation for those of you that listened. And Rich, thank you so much for your leadership, on that. And so the only other thing we're going to be just briefing you on quickly is COVID. We continue, our colleges and universities, to do relatively well, given where we are as a state and as a country, and also the status of higher education generally across the country. For example, last week, we tested close to 1,100 students, and we had 6 positive cases. So that's a positivity rate of 0.55%, which I am very pleased with. 1 case is too many, but 6 out of 1,100 is a very good result. We continue to watch and to test and to monitor. We've had to have 45 residential students since we began fall semester isolate, and we have plenty of space remaining if we get additional cases. But overall, the experience has been somewhat positive. We continue to work with the communities where there's been upticks. For example, Norwich just had an uptick. We worked Three Rivers worked with the health department and with the Department of Public Health to put up a pop-up site on their campus over the weekend. We'll probably do another one this weekend. Central's had a pop-up site as well. So as we see community spread and spikes, we are being asked by local and state public health officials to be helpful. But those spikes are not being caused by our campuses. But the concern is if at their community, they're bound to come to our campus. So all in all, we've had some cases at community colleges, but nothing to really initiate a conversation about shutting down. So we'll have more to say about that. We just have to continue to be vigilant. I just was at Middlesex yesterday to record a series of voting messages to our students. And then at the end, they asked me to do one more to remind people to please wear your mask. You know, you need to protect yourselves, you need to protect your fellow students, and you need to protect your community. So that really is my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. You know, that's really a remarkable information concerning the coronavirus in our campuses. I think, quite frankly, to read the general, national, and even Connecticut news concerning an uptick such that I think our infection rate statewide is now over 2%, which is, or close, right? Which is right. It's close statewide, and I think in Hartford we are over 2. You know, you would rapidly arrive at the conclusion that this is because kids are back at school in some cases or in some form. And you've just described a scenario in which the inverse is actually the case, where we have a lower rate in our system than seems to be the rate in the general population for reasons I don't necessarily understand. But one thing it does say is that you have done a really effective job in keeping this under control. And I think it just continues to demonstrate that if you do the right things, we can have some semblance of education, of life, albeit much, much different than we'd all like. So congratulations to you and the entire team for that. I wondered with regard to Hartford, whether at Capitol we're encountering any statistical sort of relationship to the higher rate that I heard reported in the city.
Well, I think, well, first of all, I want to thank you for your nice words, but also, you know, just to reiterate that this has been a team effort, right? And special thanks to Alice, who's really, you know, been our COVID, you know, contact person, leader, you know, working tirelessly with public health officials. But the entire team has really done, you know, an incredible job. We've seen some cases at Capitol, but nothing out of the ordinary and nothing really in proportion to the spike, you know, in Hartford. I think we did a really good job of planning and implementing the plan. Everybody from the leaders of the campus down to the maintenance folks have done an incredible job of making sure that all the protocols, you know, have been adhered to. I will also say that as a system, we are not increasing our capacity as a result of the governor's phase 3 guidance. As you know, the governor, beginning, I think tomorrow, it begins 75% capacity in restaurants. You can have more people at indoor and outdoor events. But we made a very conscious decision, which was agreed to by our campus leaders, that, you know, what we have in place right now is working. And that unless there's some dramatic need to increase the number of people you have in your dining hall or you have in your auditorium, we're going to stick to the original guidelines and not, you know, change midstream. So, but thank you. It's been an incredible effort, but really led by Alice.
The coronavirus operating officer. I think that's the business card
Well, I had three different sort of terms I was going to say that sort of went with Corona, and I'm like, no, those are not appropriate.
Superhero, just,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you, Alice. I know you've labored just with extraordinary commitment on this, and it's, so far, the results are really good. So thank you. Hopefully, we can stay in this good place here in Connecticut and in our system, and continue to map a road to recovery. While we contend with the obvious tail of this from a financial perspective, which is, just incredibly difficult as well as presented. All right. Mark, does that about cover it for your remarks here?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have today.
All right. Any of the regents have anything to add at this point? Okay. All right. Well, thank you. The committee is going to move next to an executive session for purposes of discussion concerning the evaluation or appointment of a public officer or employee. We'll take no votes. I'll ask President Ojakian to stay with us in executive session. Once we've concluded, I'll be declaring the meeting adjourned. And yes, I will message the authorities, Alice and Pam. There won't be any discussion, action, or votes taken by the committee following the executive session today. So may I have a motion to go into executive session in a second?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Naomi and Rich, thank you for the first and the second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
I think that's everyone. So the motion carries, and we'll go into an executive session. We stay put.